So, my name is Esmeralda, and I am going to present to you about one of my favorite places here in the United States. Have you ever wondered what it's like to marry someone of your same sex? If that's your preference, you probably have, and you know the challenges that come with that. Same-sex marriage was not legal in every state just 5 years ago, but as it should, that changed. As of June 26 of 2015, same-sex marriage was made legal in every single state here in the US. Who made this possible, you may ask? Well, it was the Supreme Court of the United States. They are the people you go to if you have a problem with our Constitution and you want them to address it. I suppose I've always been aware of the United States Supreme Court, but I found an interest in it recently. They spoke about it in my history class that I took this past winter intersession, and I found it to be a really interesting branch of government. I wanted to know more about it, and I wanted to let you know more about it too as a fellow American. So, I have researched this extensively for the past 3 weeks, and I have used some of my previous knowledge from said history class. We all live in the United States, and we all live by the Constitution here. So it is important that we know the laws that are in it and how they are being taken care of. According to Benzinga newspaper of 2019, the Supreme Court has been active since 1789. So as Americans, we should be knowing what they are doing to it. In the next few minutes, I will address the great branch of government that is the Supreme Court. First, I will present you with a brief background. Second, I will reveal why we need such a place as the Supreme Court. And third, I will provide you with some notable rulings. Now, let me acquaint you with the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court has a power to nullify decisions made by Congress. So, according to the Encyclopedia of Guide to Congress, they define the limit of congressional authority. So, the Constitution did not even grant the Supreme Court the power to review acts of Congress, but they assumed it by themselves early on in the 1800s. The court was created on September 24th of 1789. According to Benzinga newspaper of September 24th, 2019, the first court held 6 Supreme Justices instead of today's 9. Now before you have an image. It is of 9 men and women in their robes. They are our current Supreme Court justices, and they have been on those seats for a few years now. Most are about to retire, but they have been doing great so far. The Supreme Court was introduced because of Article 3 of the Constitution, which allowed Congress to make lower inferior courts if they needed them. Now, allow me to let you in on why we need a Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is in charge of caring for the U.S. Constitution. According to the International Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, the court only takes cases that were wronged by lower inferior courts than them, meaning that they are more likely to take a case if they see that another court judged it wrong, so they would want to make it right. The court is separate to Congress, and they only take essential cases. So this means that the court has jurisdiction over any case, so they can review it first if they wanted to before anyone else, and they could give it priority. The court receives about 1,000 cases a year, but they decide to take 100 or less in their term. Lastly, I will familiarize you with the supreme impact the Supreme Court has made and some of their notable rulings. First is one of the most important ones here in the United States. It is the Abbington versus Shem ruling. It is about the First Amendment. So this reaffirmed that the First Amendment had mandated that there was a difference between church and state. So this prohibited public schools for mixing in devotional prayer with Bible readings and all of that Christian Catholic stuff. They couldn't mix it into schools. Another notable ruling was for women's rights. It was the Akron versus Akron Center for Health, and it was reaffirming that women have the right to abortions. And this was made in 1983 according to the US Supreme Court, copyrighted 2016. This was a very advanced rule for it being the year 1983, because even now abortions aren't seen like a great thing. So for it to be a rule for about 40 years ago is very important. Now, today we learned about a great place that is the United States Supreme Court. I love learning about it. First, we learned a little bit of background. Then we went over why we need a place like this. And finally, I gave you some of their notable rulings that I thought were important. So, next time you think about marrying someone of your same sex, you should thank the Supreme Court, because of them, you are now able to do so.